You're listening to the Unstoppable Teen Podcast, episode number 9. Welcome to Unstoppable Teen, the podcast for teenagers, parents and teachers. My name is Kevin Mincher. Every week we will bring you an inspirational person or message to help you experience more success and happiness. Thanks for hanging out with us. Let's get this party started. Hello Unstoppable Nation, it's Kevin here. Welcome to the show. In this episode we've got a special one-off, never to be repeated occasion because I'm going to be interviewing a high school teacher from Canada, a lady called Deanne Barrett. Now, we've all had at some point in our past a teacher or teachers who frankly have bored us to death. And we couldn't wait for the bell to ring so we could get the heck out of their lesson. On the other hand, we've all had teachers at some point in time that have gone out of their way to make their lessons brilliant. They've gone the extra mile to inspire you and to help you and to empower you to become more than you were before. Deanne is one of those teachers that goes the extra mile. I mean, so much so that during her summer holiday, she networked with experts on teenagers from all over the world. And she interviewed 20 different experts and put together an online conference called Lit From Within that's freely available to anybody at no cost. These are experts on teenage confidence, experts on how to learn more effectively and get better grades in school. These are experts on things like ADHD and other behaviour problems. I mean, you name it when it comes to teenage issues, and Deanne has interviewed an expert on that subject and made the content available for free for everybody. Before we get into where you can access that content, I talked to Deanne in this interview about her own life, about what she was like in her own childhood and throughout her own teenage years. It turns out that teachers are human. No, that sounds ridiculous. But sometimes when we're young, we forget that these people have had lives just like ours. So it's kind of refreshing to get the inside scoop on this particular high school teacher and what she's really like. So I thoroughly enjoyed the interview. I'm really psyched that if you stick around until the end, Deanne will tell you where you can get access to these 20 expert interviews completely free of charge. So without further ado, here is the wonderful, the amazing Deanne Barrett. Hello Deanne, it's great to have you on the line from Canada. You're a high school teacher over there, and what I'd love is if you could help our listeners understand where you teach and how you got into teaching.
You bet. So I'm here in Calgary, which is in Western Canada, in the province of Alberta, and I was born and raised in Calgary. When I was in high school, I loved my English classes, and I was just really inspired by a lot of my teachers, and I really felt like that was something that I wanted to do. So in my grade 12 year, I applied for 2 programs. I applied for an English program that would then lead into education, and I applied for an interior design program because I also loved art and drawing. And at the end of the day, I was accepted into both programs, but I really felt like having a broad education and being able to study literature more was where I wanted to be. And the longer I've studied English, the more I've realized that studying literature is really about studying human nature. So that has kept me going, and I've been teaching English now in high schools for 14 years.
And that is teaching in Canada?
That's right.
Fantastic. Let me ask you, what do you think makes a great teacher?
I think the great teachers are the ones who really can see the students in front of them and understand who they are and where they are in life, and find ways to connect that with the subject areas they're teaching that they are passionate about. I think it's really that sense of enthusiasm for your own interests that really can be infectious for the students.
Excellent. What I'd like to do is I'd like to rewind back in time a little bit and fill in some of the blanks, because I think that when young people meet their teachers, they make the common confusion that they're not human, or at least they're not allowed to relate to them on a human-to-human level. There's this separation between students and teachers. And I'd like to see if we can break some of those down and normalise you, make you human again. So what were you like when you were growing up? What were your hobbies? What were your interests? What were your passions?
I have always loved to read. In the summers, our parents would take us camping for 2 weeks at a time, and I would sit with my feet in the cold mountain stream and have a novel in my lap and just read and hike. So that's one of the things that I continue to love to do because it really recharges me. I was probably not your typical teenager. I was very introverted and shy, and I loved handicrafts. So I would do needlework and I would make quilts. And all these things that I kind of hid from the people at school. My brother played hockey, which is a very traditional Canadian pastime. And so I went to lots of hockey rinks. And when I was very small, I would take my coloring book. And then when I was a bit bigger, I would take my needlepoint and work away on projects because I really felt a sense of completion. And I loved working with the colors, and it was just kind of calming and relaxing.
So I got to go back to your reading. And I'd love, I know that it's a big challenge that we have, certainly here in the UK, and I understand it's the case all over the world, of young people are actually reading more because they're engaged in social media, but it's like they're reading short form stuff, 140 characters or notes that are underneath an Instagram photograph. So if somebody hated reading, but wanted to improve their abilities in English classes, what recommendations would you have to get started, and how could they, develop that over time?
Yeah, so it really starts with finding reading material that you actually are willing to read. And so I know it sounds like a nerdy thing to do, but really talk to your librarian at school or a public library, or even go on their website, because there are often really great suggestions for teen readers that are really highly interesting. There are so many writers writing really cool stuff for teens these days that's readable, and start there with something interesting. But the challenge is to go to increased levels of difficulty. So teen literature, if you're in, 16 and still only reading teen literature, you really need to take a leap into adult literature because the vocabulary is more complicated and the ideas are more complicated. So if you can find someone, a mentor, who can help you figure out something that will be interesting to you to read, and then work your way into more challenging levels, that's the way to go. And now we're also in a great place that we have lots of films based on novels. So if there's a film that you love, see if there's a novel, and you kind of get a sense of the storyline, and then you can work through. Great tip. I know part of the difficulty is actually the sitting still and reading. And so if it's 15 minutes at a time, and that becomes something that you just work away at every day, even at first the 15 minutes might not seem that pleasurable. Just keep at it. Sit on an exercise ball. Sit on a stationary bike if you're a person that just has to move, and find a way to make it enjoyable. Great tips. I love that.
I hated reading through my childhood and into my early teenage years because the books that I got were really the books that I got through school. And they were tied to the national curriculum, which were often out of date and seemed not relevant to me. Like, we had to read Shakespeare. And I'm thinking, I have no idea what this dude's talking about. And by the idea that I could go and find, if I'm into sport, there are books about sport. If I'm into dance, there's books about dance. You mentioned there about find your favourite movie and find the book version of your favourite movie and follow on through it. The other thing that you've just said is exactly what I did. I used to climb trees to read my book. I'd go and sit down by the sports field where there'd be a game of cricket or football going on, and I'd read for a few minutes, then I'd watch the game for a few minutes, I'd read for a few minutes, watch the game for a few minutes. And over time, I built up my reading muscle. And now barely a day goes by where I don't read. But I had to go through what you've just described when I was a teenager in order to get there. Can you give... And
I recently learned a lot about kind of the timing of things. And we allow ourselves to be really distracted by our phones, and there's so many other interesting things to do, and it just takes a little bit of persistence to sit down for a short period of time and just do it.
Makes total sense. Can you give me your favorite 5 books? Doesn't have to be 5, could be 3, but give me your, if you had a recommended reading list What would be on it?
Yeah, I remember the first book I fell in love with. I was about grade 5, and I read Island of the Blue Dolphins by Scott Odell. And that one, I still will reread it sometimes at any age. It's just a beautiful book about a woman kind of who lives near the sea. To give you a short intro,
Yeah.
I loved Anne of Green Gables.
Yeah.
It's a Canadian classic. She's on Prince Edward Island in the east coast of Canada, and set, in the 1900s, where there were carriages, and she was just very precocious
Yeah.
and a little bit out of step with the rest of her peers, but that was her greatest strength. And now I really love John Green, who's written lots of great stuff, as well as Rainbow Rowell wrote a great book called Eleanor and Park that just was heartbreaking and made me cry, and a lot of my students have loved that one. And I just finished a book called Matter Carmine, written by an author here in Canada. And it was just a really rollicking tale of this man's journey after he was in the war that appropriated parts of Mexico that then became California. So a really great, descriptive, rich tale that I could just fall right into and immerse myself in.
Fantastic. We will, in our show notes, link to the books that you've just mentioned so that young people can find them more easily. Thank you.
Awesome.
So you mentioned something earlier on about how you felt self-aware. You were aware that you felt a little bit different to some of your other peers when you were younger. And there were some interests and hobbies that you had that you felt like you needed to hide them because you might not be accepted, because they weren't necessarily the norm of what young people at that time were into. I find time and time again that successful people, outstanding people, have that sense about themselves, that at some point in their youth they felt different to the group. So my question is, how do you manage that? When you're a young person going through it, how do you accept your difference and not conform to the norms of the crowd?
I always felt like conforming to the norms of the crowd was a trap, because when I looked around and saw what many of the other kids were doing, it was not things that I was interested in doing.
Yeah.
And so I was pretty content to kind of live within my own sense of values. And I think that came from a strong sense of family connection and family network, because when I was with my family and my extended family, I felt like I very much had a place there and was valued, and it was, I was acknowledged for the person who I was, and I didn't need to hide there. So I had that space where I was really me.
Yeah.
And when I went to school, I just kind of saw all these yahoos doing ridiculous things that I didn't feel like would serve me or would help me be who I needed to be in that context. I was the kind of person that did well at school, and I could just quietly do my own thing, and didn't engage with a lot of the drama that many of my peers were kind of working through in terms of their social group.
Now, what impact did that have on your self-confidence?
Well, I think in two ways. In one way, I felt like I knew who I was.
Yeah.
And I also had the sense that part of that was a person who was not going to really always engage in social situations, which did, make me an outsider in some ways. But I also had a small circle of friends, so I knew that I wasn't a complete hermit or a complete loner.
Yeah.
So I kind of I was always questioning, like, do I need to push myself more to be involved with other people, or am I okay to kind of be in this space of having this close circle of friends and that's it? And so I'm still that way. As a teacher, I have had to learn to be a lot more extroverted, to engage with a lot more people over the course of the day.
Yeah.
But really it's those quiet times of reading or working through something on my own that kind of fill me up to allow me to be able to go out and do it all over again the next day.
Fantastic. Now, I know that many of the young people that are listening will be considering some form of teaching or education as a potential future career path. They may want to go and become a primary school teacher, elementary school teacher, middle school teacher, high school teacher, college professor, sports coach, or another kind of instructor. So could you help us by giving us some careers advice? What does it take to become a great teacher? And I guess what I'm looking for is, what are some of the barriers and obstacles that you had to overcome to become the teacher that you are today?
I think sometimes people go into teaching with a heart to give back, which is a wonderful place to start. As long as you can keep the edge of recognizing that you need to keep learning yourself. Some teachers get into a trap of feeling like they have all the answers and they just need to fill up their students' minds.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely a trap, because really the great part of teaching is that it enlivens your own sense of learning. You know, what can I learn from these students that are in front of me this year? What do they know that I don't know? How do they engage with the world through their technology in ways that I don't, because I'm from a different generation? So if you can find ways to kind of keep it fresh. My favorite learning opportunities came early on in my teaching career, where I was teaching at a school that had a huge amount of ethnic diversity that was very different than the schools that I grew up in as a student. And I learned so much from those students. Many of them, most of them, the students were born in Canada, but their parents were born elsewhere. And so they would return to their parents' country of origin over the summer to connect with their family.
Yeah.
And when they would come back, just hearing, it was second best to being able to travel myself, because they would come back with stories from different countries. Often we would have potlucks, and so we would have all these amazing dishes to explore. And that was a real learning edge for me. I remember teaching Romeo and Juliet, and my students could talk about arranged marriage from experience. Some of them, their parents were part of an arranged marriage, and that was a completely different mindset to what I had grown up with, in terms of like always knowing that I would be able to choose the partner that I chose. Yeah. And yet they came from it, and it changed my view of Romeo and Juliet. It changed my view of that story, because they had something to say about it from their understanding.
I've no doubt that there are, within education systems around the world, great strengths, things that empower young people. What's your take on the great things that our education systems in places like Canada, United Kingdom, United States, Australia, what's brilliant about our education system?
Great question. I think the kinds of preparation that teachers are going through now, that really is focused a lot on mentorship between experienced teachers and the new teachers coming in, I think that's come a long way. It used to be more of a sink or swim kind of model, like you either have what it takes or you don't. And I think we're learning a lot more about the human spirit in terms of helping to mentor young teachers into those things that it takes to be a great teacher.
Great.
And I think we've come a long way also in terms of understanding students and really who they are and what they're capable of. We know a lot more about the teenage brain, for example, and where students really need support in terms of planning, because they can't always think long term. So I think that's a change as well, because we have more of a sense of supporting those, what people call the soft skills, of how do we help students stay motivated? How do we help them understand their strengths and abilities? How do we show them where they're successful and where they need to improve, and how do we really support that?
Yeah.
So I think we've come a long way in terms of supporting people through the journey of school, rather than just saying, here it is, you need to do it, sink or swim.
Absolutely. I sometimes think that it's the old familiarity breeds contempt, that we take it for granted that we're going to have this free education system from, in your country, K through 12, or here from sort of the age of 4 or 5 through to the age of 18. And actually there are huge chunks of the world that don't get that, where the government doesn't spend billions of pounds of taxpayers' money, or dollars of money, taxpayers' money on each child, helping them prepare for the future. And so it's great to hear your take on what's great. My question now is it's obviously not perfect. Nothing's perfect. So if you had a magic wand and you could go and change anything in the education system and fix it, what would you do? What would you improve?
There are so many things that I have thought of over the years. So now I'm just trying to recall them all. The biggest thing I would improve is really help teachers to help their students see where their strengths are and where they need to continue learning. I know that we use number grades, we use letter grades, and those things are helpful in terms of comparing students to each other for whatever reasons we might need to do that. for admissions for the next level. Really, that's where it comes down to. But those numbers or letters don't actually tell an individual anything at all about their own skills and abilities. And yet that's where we get so focused on, because it seems like such an objective marker that we want that to tell us something.
Yeah.
But instead we need to do the work of reflecting on each piece of work that we've done, reflecting on the process that has taken us to get there, thinking about kind of where we are and what we were able to put into things, and really recognizing where are my strengths and where do I need to keep learning. And I find time and time again when I'm talking with students, they don't know, and they don't know how to figure that out. And so that's the process that I try and work them through, so they can start to see, in the brainstorming stage, I'm really great at that part, but the actual structure of how I was supposed to respond, that part I wasn't so sure of.
Yeah.
So they can start to develop a sense of what their strengths are and abilities are in terms of the ways that they're thinking and the ways that they're processing and the ways that they're kind of outputting what it is that they've learned. That's the big one that I'd like to change, because I think over the long term, those are the skills that adults need to have. Mm-hmm. Okay, in this task that I did, where was the strength? Where did I miss a step? What do I do next time? Who do I know in my life that's great at this that I can connect with? All those questions help serve us well, no matter what task we're doing in our lives when we're trying to figure out something new.
In the bigger context, why do you think it's important, as in just beyond passing a grade in an English and math or science class, why do you think it's important for young people to know what their strengths are?
Often their strengths are hidden even to themselves, just because of the kind of tasks they're asked to do, in the highly structured environment of school. So I think everyone needs something that they can feel good at, that they know, I'm good at this feels good to me. And also to have some things that they can do that they know no one's going to judge me on this. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to do it, and I'm just going to enjoy it. And it can just be me doing this, and I'll challenge myself. And I think having that sense of activities in life that you can feel good about and you will naturally want to challenge yourself to learn a new thing about, that's the curiosity that will lead you throughout life. Yeah. When we lose that sense of curiosity or interest in taking on a new challenge, then I think there is a dullness in our life.
So I think it's very important that whilst there is a massive emphasis on teachers helping students succeed, that the weighting actually needs to go more towards the student helping themselves. After all, it's their life. Mm-hmm. And so can you give some top tips for those students that don't want to settle for second best, that want the best future possible? Can you give some top tips for students that want to take control of their own learning and want to push forwards? And it doesn't matter whether that's academic learning in school or learning a sport or singing or dance or whatever it may be. If I want to learn something and I want to master something, I want to get good at it, can you give me some tips and some suggestions as to how I can learn more effectively?
I think the first one is consistent, frequent action. I've learned this the most through developing a practice of meditation. It's easy to say, oh, I don't have time to meditate today. Yeah. But if I can take a couple of minutes and just say, you know what, I dedicate to 2 minutes for sure, then I'll do the 2 minutes. And often I find time for a little bit more. And then the next day I'll do 2 minutes and I'll find time to do a little bit more. And a 2-minute meditation doesn't always do much for my mind in that moment. I don't get to a place of calm or zen, but if I do 2 minutes for a week, and then sometimes I do a little bit more than that, and then sometimes I have time for 10 minutes, the accumulated effect of continually coming back to that practice helps me to be able to have more control over what I'm thinking during the day. And so that example holds true for whatever you want to become good at. It's those small, consistent actions that build up on themselves.
Yes.
And it trains you to push through the frustration. So sometimes my couple of minutes, even 10 minutes of meditation is frustrating because I go into planning mode. What do I need to get next? Where is this project at? What do I need to do here? And I'll have to almost shout in my mind and say, I'm meditating, to get myself back to that sense of focus. And that doesn't seem to be what meditation should be about. I should just fall into this Zen place, but it doesn't happen. And so I think that whatever it is that you're trying to learn, that consistent, frequent action to just say, this is what I'm going to do. It's going to be painful today, or it's going to be frustrating today, but I'm just going to do it for this amount of time. And then I can go do something else that I enjoy. The next day, I'm going to come back at it and just push through the difficult parts.
Love it. Consistent, frequent action is the key to success and learning and mastery of any subject. If that's a key to success, what's a common mistake that you see students making that you say, oh, if I could just get the world to stop doing that, they'd become more successful? What's a common mistake in learning?
I think in those very small daily actions, we can easily dismiss them and say it doesn't really matter. Because it's so small, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And I think it really does matter because of the buildup of doing it slowly, consistently, day by day. And just having that trust that it really will accumulate to something larger. It really will cultivate an ability or a skill or a habit of mind.
Yes.
So having that trust that, yes, it really will amount to something. And I think that's where mentors can play a really big role, because they can often hold that vision for you in a stronger way than you could do for yourself, of saying, yes, really set that intention for yourself each day to work towards that. It really will pay off. And having that kind of mentor or cheering squad to say, yes, keep going, it really will pay off in the end.
I like that. Now, you have a very important, brilliant online summit that's coming up, and I want to ask you about that in a moment. Before I do, I just want to get one final takeaway about parents, because there may well be some parents or carers listening to this episode right now that are also looking for some top tips. So you've helped us with some advice for the students themselves. If you could help parents around the world do something differently that would support their child's learning, what could they do better?
Yeah, I think parents really need to be one of the people in a student's life that really holds the vision for them of what's possible, but not what the parent believes the student is possible of, but really listening to what the student wants to be able to achieve and help holding that vision. And reminding the student of really things that they're good at and things that you like about them. I think the more students can feel their own sense of worth and have that reflected back to them in a really specific way, and honoring the process, saying, I know that you're struggling with studying your math, but I know that you've spent, 15 minutes at it yesterday and it was really frustrating for you. And I know you're continuing to spend 15 minutes on it each day. And I'm just really, really proud of you that you're committed to that, even though it's frustrating. I think being able to read back to students what they're doing and affirm the process and those daily habits that they're putting in place, that's really where the gold is.
Good tip. I like it. So tell us, please, about the vision that you have for this online summit, Lit from Within. I've been blown away by what you've set up. I know it's going to be taking place on the 1st of October. And so please, can you share with us some more information about it?
Yeah. So as I said, I've been teaching for 14 years, and the longer that I've taught, the more I've realized that I can teach my students to write a really great essay, but that skill is not one that's going to serve them for life. It's really the skill of being able to tap into your own inner resources, your sense of resilience and confidence and strength that you have to just keep tapping into. That's really what I want to work on with teens. So I've created this online speaker summit called Lit from Within, connecting teens to their own inner resources. And I've gathered together over 22 experts. Each person is kind of talking to teens and parents from a different angle. I've interviewed life coaches, motivational speakers, therapists, mindfulness teachers, yoga instructors, each who has a sense of how to support teens on that journey of connecting in with your own inner strength and really seeing your own inner strengths and knowing and having that trust that they are valuable to you, and knowing how to kind of cultivate them, which also helps facing those difficult challenges. If you have a sense of your own strength and know that you have a certain collection of things that you're really good at that you have to offer the world, then those difficult challenges that you have to learn don't seem so overwhelming when you know that you have something going for you to begin with. So the really exciting part of this online speaker summit is that it really creates a culture for teens and parents to immerse themselves in, to hear from so many different people about how to really connect in with your own sense of strength. So it's super exciting for me to be able to interview all of these speakers.
Yeah.
And it'll launch October 1st. And so the way it works is people register for the event. It's completely free to teens, parents, teachers, whoever wants to connect in. So you just have to register for the event through our link. And then each day in October, starting October 1st, you'll get an email with the interview with the speaker for that day. And so I think I have 22 speakers now. So for 22 days in October, you'll get one interview for each day and a link to that speaker's website so you can check out their work.
I find it remarkable. One of my top tips for young people is that you go and get expert advice. Go and find people in the world that are brilliant at what they do and ask them how they do it. And if you replicate their mindset, their attitudes, their behaviours, their values, their routines, then you can shortcut a lot of failure, save a huge amount of time, and accelerate your own progress. And normally that is ridiculously expensive, both in time and money. To go and find expert advice takes a lot of time to find the right expert, and then you've got to pay them a chunk of money to get it. So for you to put 22 experts all in one place and make it all free of charge is phenomenal. And so I'll say thank you on behalf of our listeners for you creating that thing. There's a couple of things that I love about it also that's more than that, and that is that most people are great at being a critic, but not at being a creator. I'm fed up of hearing people moaning and complaining about an education system that in comparison to what's happening in the majority of the world is brilliant. It's not perfect, but it is brilliant. And yes, there are improvements that need to be made, but instead of just being a critic, a moaner and a blamer, you've stepped up and said, yeah, I'm a busy teacher, but in my vacation time, in my weekends, I'm going to communicate with some experts around the world and create some solutions. So you need a whole heap of praise for doing that. And what I like about it also is that it's a holistic approach. It's not just about study skills techniques. You've mentioned there people that are experts in the likes of yoga or meditation. There's a whole mind-body thing going on where people will be able to develop their emotions, their communication skills, all kinds of stuff that come together as one big whole to contribute to a young person's progress. So it's brilliant. We will put a link to the event in the show notes to this episode. Deanne, if people wanted to follow you personally, whether that was on social media, whether that was a website, where would you send them to?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook at Deanne Barrett. Now they have that @ so it's Deanne Barrett at the Gratitude Workshop. And I'm also on Twitter, so Deanne Barrett at Gratitude Works. Fantastic.
Thank you very much. Final question. You know this is the Unstoppable Teen podcast. So in your opinion, what does it take to become unstoppable?
I'm thinking back to so many of my students that I feel really were unstoppable. I had one student who in my grade 11 class, she would say, vote me for prime minister. And she would just insert that into every class. And she just held on to this vision for herself. And I know she is through law school now, working in a law practice. Fantastic. So that is often the mode of many of our prime ministers in Canada is to be a lawyer first. And so I feel like she's well on her way. And she just, has held this vision for herself, that that's the direction she's going to go. And not that everyone in high school needs to know where they're going to go, because I think that's a trap we fall into. Yeah. But just holding a vision for yourself of this is where I'm headed right now. This is what I'm putting myself into, and just going for it. That really is what creates unstoppable teams.
Deanne, on behalf of our listeners, want to say a huge thank you, both for sharing your time and your expertise. I know that you've made a difference today, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. It was my honor.
So there you go, folks. That was Deanne Barrett. Surely she has to be up for a Teacher of the Year award. I mean, do you know any other high school teachers that have gone further out of their way during their holiday time to go the extra mile to interview 20 experts from around the world to help students everywhere on the planet improve their confidence, learn more effectively, develop better relationships, deal with common problems. I don't know anybody else who's done that. I consider it a privilege to have been invited to be a part of that summit. And if you want to get your hands on the content, as you know, it's all completely free of charge, then simply go to litfromwithinsummit.com/summit. I'm going to put the link to the website where you can register for free in today's show notes, so you can get that online. And as always, let me know what you think. And I don't mean just about the interview that Deanne did with me and the one that I did with Deanne today here in his podcast, but I'd strongly encourage you to go and listen to all the other experts that Deanne has interviewed. I'm sure that some of them will be more entertaining than others, but I don't doubt for a moment that they all have valuable insights that could help to improve the quality of your life. If I were you, I'd get signed up. In fact, I am signed up because I want to get this knowledge and I want to do some learning too. So join me in the summit. You can go litfromwithinsummit.com/summit. Check us out on our normal social media channels. We'll be promoting the summit from there as well. And let me know your questions. In upcoming episodes, I'm keen to answer your questions and help you improve your performance, not just in school, but in your life as well. So go check us out on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, all those places. You'll find us at Unstoppable Teen. And yes, between now and the next episode, be unstoppable. Bye for now.